From the very first day I met her, I could feel the chill in her eyes. My mother-in-law didn't even try to fake a smile. She looked me up and down like I was something rotten on her porch. I was polite, smiled, even brought her flowers the first time I visited. But she scoffed and said, "Don't think flowers will make me like you." That was our start. Every family dinner, every holiday, she made sure I knew I wasn't welcome. She'd criticize everything, my cooking, my clothes, even how I spoke. If I laughed, she'd roll her eyes. If I was quiet, she'd accuse me of being stuck up. I tried everything to win her over, thinking maybe she just needed time. I even baked her favorite dessert for her birthday, only to hear her say, "Did you buy this from a store? It tastes cheap." Her words always carried venom, and my husband would either laugh it off or stay silent. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it, maybe I was being too sensitive. But then she started doing things that couldn't be brushed off, like rearranging things in our house when she visited without asking, or whispering to my husband when she thought I wasn't listening. I'd walk in and the room would go quiet. The worst part? She made sure everyone else thought she was just being playful, but I saw through it. Her tone, her smirks, the way she'd hug me with fake affection in front of others. It was all a performance. Behind closed doors, she made it crystal clear. I was not part of her family, and I never would be. And I had no idea just how far she was willing to go to push me out. I married my husband because I truly loved him. He was kind, supportive, and made me feel safe. But what I didn't realize was that I wasn't just marrying him. I was marrying his whole family, especially his mother. And she made it very clear that she came first. Behind closed doors, life became a silent war. She would call him at all hours, asking for things she didn't really need. If we made plans, she'd suddenly need him, and he'd go running. If I said anything, he'd say, "She's just lonely," or "It's not a big deal." But it was a big deal. She was everywhere, uninvited at our dinners, showing up when we needed time alone, making comments like, "You stole my son." At first, I tried to laugh it off, but slowly her words started planting seeds. I began to feel like a guest in my own marriage. She'd criticize me in front of him, and he'd stay quiet. Once she told me I wasn't wife material because I didn't serve him a plate fast enough, and he just looked away. It hurt. I felt invisible, like no matter what I did, she'd find something wrong, and he'd never defend me. She made me feel like I was competing for a spot in his life, and I was losing. I remember once she came over, saw a photo of our honeymoon, and said, "I wonder if he regrets it." That one sentence shattered something in me. I loved my husband, but I was starting to wonder if love was enough when his loyalty was always split. I married one man, but it felt like I'd been forced into a contract with a whole family, and one woman who would never let me forget who really came first. One day out of nowhere, my mother-in-law called and invited me and my husband over for dinner. Her voice was unusually sweet, almost forced. She said she wanted to make peace and start fresh. I should have felt relieved, but something about it didn't sit right. This was the same woman who'd made my life miserable since day one. Now she wanted to play nice? My gut told me something was off, but my husband was excited. He said maybe she was finally changing, so I went along with it. When we arrived at her house, the table was set perfectly, like it belonged in a magazine. Candles, fancy dishes, soft music. It was all too much. She greeted us with a big smile and even hugged me. It was the first time she'd ever done that. Her tone was warm, her laugh too loud, and her compliments just didn't sound real. "You look lovely tonight," she said, while giving me a quick glance. Everything felt like a performance. The way she acted, the way she served us, the way she laughed too hard at everything my husband said. It was all staged. As we sat down to eat, I noticed her eyes kept watching me closely, like she was waiting for something. The food was great, but I couldn't relax. I kept looking around, wondering what was coming. My husband didn't notice a thing. He was just happy we were all getting along. But I knew better. This wasn't about peace. It felt like a setup, and deep down I knew this dinner wasn't the end of the war. It was the beginning of something much worse. She was planning something. I could feel it in my bones. She handed me a glass of wine with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "For peace," she said, raising her own glass. I took it, but something didn't feel right. The glass was slightly wet, like it had been rinsed in a hurry. And the smell, it was faint, but not just wine. There was a sharpness, a chemical hint, something that didn't belong. My gut twisted. Everyone else was laughing, but my eyes stayed locked on that glass. She kept watching me, subtly, pretending to chat with my husband, but I saw her glance down at my hand more than once, like she was waiting for me to drink. I swirled the wine slowly, pretending to enjoy the moment, while inside I was screaming. My instinct told me not to drink it. I had no proof, no reason to accuse her, but the way she was acting, the forced peace, the staged dinner, and now this weird drink, it all screamed setup. I faked a smile and casually put my glass down. Then I waited. That's when something happened. Her husband, sitting right beside me, reached for my glass without asking. "Let me try that one," he said, laughing. I froze. She did too. Her hand jerked like she wanted to stop him, but couldn't without making it obvious. He took a sip and immediately coughed. Hard. His face changed. He looked confused, then uneasy. She turned pale. My heart pounded. I didn't know what was in that glass, but now I was sure. I wasn't imagining anything. That moment changed everything. My suspicions were real. She wasn't just trying to push me out anymore. She was willing to go further, much further, and I knew I had to protect myself before it was too late. I excused myself from the table, pretending I needed to fix my lipstick. I took my glass with me, walking calmly to the bathroom, but my hands were shaking. My mind was racing. I knew something wasn't right with that wine. It smelled off, and her eyes kept following it. I didn't have proof, but I trusted my gut, and my gut said danger. As I stood in the hallway near the bathroom, I looked at her untouched glass sitting on the serving cart. An idea hit me so fast I didn't even think twice. I swapped the glasses. I poured my wine into a flower vase and quickly replaced it with hers. The glass I returned to the table wasn't mine anymore. It was hers, and I placed it right next to her husband. Back at the table, I smiled like nothing had happened. She glanced at the glass, slightly confused, but didn't say anything. Moments later, her husband, thinking it was his, took a sip. Instantly, his face changed. He started coughing and holding his throat. Her smile dropped. She stood up in panic, reaching toward him, but he waved her off, trying to catch his breath. He said it tasted bitter, metallic. I didn't say a word. I just watched her. She looked terrified, not for him, but because she knew. She realized that wasn't the glass she meant for me. Everything got tense. My husband asked what was going on, but she brushed it off, pretending he'd just swallowed wrong. But I saw it, that flicker in her eyes. She knew her secret was slipping, and she had no idea that I had just turned her little trap into her own nightmare. That night, she planned to teach me a lesson, but instead, I taught her one. Everything happened so fast. Her husband started coughing harder, his face turning red, then pale. He grabbed the edge of the table, trying to stand, but his legs gave out. He collapsed right there, his plate crashing to the floor with him. Everyone froze. My husband jumped up in shock, rushing to his father. I just sat there, heart racing, watching her. Her face went completely white, eyes wide, lips trembling. For the first time, she wasn't in control. She looked at me, then at the glass, then back at me, and I could see the truth hit her. She realized what happened. Her plan had flipped. My husband kept shouting, asking what was wrong with his dad. His mom didn't speak. She looked like she couldn't breathe. I finally stood and called for an ambulance while she just stood there, silent, frozen. When the paramedics came and took her husband away, she didn't even follow. She sat down, staring at the table, eyes still fixed on that glass. That night, everything fell apart. My husband was confused, worried, and asked me over and over what I thought happened. I didn't say much. I just told him I knew something was off, but I didn't tell him about the switch. Not yet. I wanted her to live with that fear, that maybe I knew, that maybe I had proof, that maybe she'd been exposed. Watching her squirm in silence was better than any revenge I could have planned. The woman who always controlled the room, always made me feel small, now sat speechless while her own plan exploded in her face. That dinner wasn't about peace. It was about power. But by the end of the night, the power was mine, and she knew it. At the hospital, things got serious fast. Her husband was stabilized, but the doctors looked concerned. They ordered tests, including a toxicology screen, just to be safe. Hours later, they came back with results that raised alarms. There were traces of a foreign substance in his system, something that shouldn't have been there. It wasn't fatal, but it was enough to make anyone sick. The doctors asked if he had eaten or drunk anything unusual. My husband turned to his mom, confused. She shook her head and played dumb. "Just a family dinner," she said, forcing a smile. But I could see the fear growing in her eyes. She thought no one knew. She thought I had stayed quiet. That's when I made my move. I asked her to step outside with me for some air. I acted gentle, even worried. "Let's talk," I said. She followed me, still trying to play the victim. Outside, she broke down. She started whispering fast, her voice shaking. It wasn't meant for him, I just wanted to scare you. Just a little. Just enough to make you leave. She kept talking, panicking, spilling everything. But what she didn't know was that my phone was recording in my pocket the whole time. Her words, her guilt, her exact confession, it was all captured. Every second of it. I didn't react. I just nodded, pretended to comfort her, told her I understood. But inside, I felt power shift again. She thought she got away with it. She thought I'd stay quiet forever. But now I had something stronger than revenge. I had proof. She dug her own grave with her own mouth, and I was going to decide exactly when and how to bury her with it. I went straight to the police station the next morning. I had the recording, the toxicology report, everything they would need to open an investigation. I sat there in the parking lot with the file in my hands, ready to walk in. But something stopped me. Not fear. Strategy. I realized if she got arrested and charged, the story would end too soon. A courtroom would bring her shame. Yes, but it would also bring her sympathy. Maybe even silence from my in-laws. I didn't want her to go to jail. I wanted her to live in fear, to look over her shoulder every single day wondering when the truth would hit her like a storm. So instead, I made copies of everything. The recording, the medical report, even a written statement of what she told me. I didn't give them to the police. I mailed one copy to her. No note, just the evidence. The moment she opened that envelope, her world cracked. My husband said she locked herself in her room for a whole day. She didn't speak, didn't come out for meals. She knew I had her confession and that I wasn't afraid to use it. Then I mailed a second copy to her church, where she was head of the women's committee. Suddenly, the whispers started. The people she used to control began keeping their distance. Her friends stopped calling. Her power started crumbling from the inside. That was better than any trial. Now every time I walk into the same room as her, she can't look me in the eyes. She knows I could destroy her reputation in a second. And she knows I chose not to, because living in that quiet, helpless fear, that's the revenge she never saw coming. It all built up to one moment. I invited the entire family over. My husband's siblings, their spouses, even the cousins. Everyone thought it was just a regular family dinner. But this time, I was the one who had something to serve. After everyone had eaten and settled in, I stood up and said I needed to share something important. I played the recording. Her voice filled the room, nervous, shaky, and clearly confessing what she'd done. There was no way to deny it. You could have heard a pin drop. Faces turned pale. Some gasped. Her own children looked at her like they didn't know her anymore. She tried to speak, to explain, but the damage was done. No one wanted to hear excuses. The woman who once controlled every room with fear and manipulation now sat in silence, completely exposed. She didn't just lose her image. She lost her grip on the entire family. After that night, everything changed. Her phone barely rang. Her church friends stopped inviting her. Family events happened without her. She wasn't banned, but no one wanted her around anymore. She faded into the background like she had never mattered. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger after that. She buried herself. Even my husband, who once always gave her the benefit of the doubt, started to see her for who she really was. He apologized for not believing me sooner, for letting her poison spread through our marriage for so long. She still lives in the same house, but she's like a shadow now. No voice, no power, no respect. The woman who tried to break me was left broken by her own words, her own choices, and the family she thought she could control forever. After everything that happened, we finally cut ties with her. My husband, who had always defended her, finally saw the truth with his own eyes and ears. He couldn't deny the recording. He couldn't explain away the toxicology results. And most of all, he couldn't ignore how close I came to real harm because of his mother. That day, he told her she was no longer welcome in our lives. No more visits, no more calls, nothing. And for the first time since I married into this family, I finally felt free. Her husband, my father-in-law, was crushed. He had always believed she was harsh, but never dangerous. When he found out what she had done, and that the wine was meant for me, he didn't say a word. He just left the room, packed a bag that night, moved in with his sister. He hasn't gone back since. Quietly, he filed for separation. No yelling, no drama, just disappointment and distance. He finally knew the real woman he had lived beside for decades. As for me, my home feels different now. Lighter, safer. I no longer flinch at the sound of my phone. I no longer dread family gatherings. I sleep peacefully, knowing she's out of our lives. That constant tension in my chest, gone. I can finally breathe. Sometimes silence is the loudest revenge. She's alone now, surrounded by everything she once used to control and manipulate, but none of it means anything anymore. The queen of drama, now living in quiet exile. And me? I've got my husband, my peace, and my life back. No more games, no more fear, just peace, and the satisfaction of knowing she destroyed herself without me ever needing to lay a finger. If you enjoyed the revenge story, like, share, comment, and subscribe to World Revenge Stories, where every tale is a new saga of revenge.